Hello world, my name is Victor Engelmann. Welcome back to the series on professional network design using Linux. Today I want to talk about the Apache web server. So when you are on the internet, you use your browser, you go to different websites, right? And these websites run on web servers, and one popular web server is Apache. Lately, Nginx has become very popular, and maybe talking about Apache is a bit out of date. But I will make a video about Nginx also, but I'm just personally more familiar with Apache, so that's why I will do that first. And let's jump right in. So I will again go to the same server that I've used in the last few videos, KRB5 SSH server. Okay, that's just a Raspberry Pi, which which is just running a normal Raspberry Pi OS, and it's joined to my domain, but that's not really relevant in this video. It would be relevant for Kerberos authentication, because actually Apache does support Kerberos authentication, but that's going to be a topic for another video. What I want to do today is really just set up the server and be able to browse there and do a little bit of programming, but so I'm on the server now, and in here I will now install Apache 2. Let's install that like this. Okay, now it's done installing, and let's look into the configuration files. Okay, we have apache2.conf, and we also have mods are plugins. That's not relevant for now. But you have this directory sites available, which contains multiple configuration files. So here you can configure multiple domains that you want to run on the same machine. So here you can put configurations, but for these sites, but only the ones in sites enabled are actually used, right? So in sites enabled you will have a symlink to the file. You see here in sites enabled you have 000 default, which is a file in sites available. So here is the actual file, and here is just a symlink that tells the system, hey, this one is actually active. Okay. But you can put multiple symlinks into the sites enabled to run multiple websites on the same machine. Because the thing is, in a domain name server, right, like Bind or any other domain name server, you can put multiple entries with the same IP address, right? And when you put a domain name into your browser, your browser then asks the domain name server, hey, what IP is that? And then contacts the IP that it gets from the domain name server. Okay, so you could get the same IP address for different domains, and that's the point. The browser sends the domain that you've requested with the HTTP request. Okay, and then Apache can look at that and distinguish, hey, this is for this domain, this is for the other domain, and then take the files that it sends back to you from different locations, depending on which domain you have used to access the same IP. Okay, like that you can run multiple sites on the same physical machine. Okay, let's look into this default site. This is already a pretty good default configuration file. Yeah, here you can configure a IP address that it should listen on. You know, a listen address can be used if you have multiple network interfaces, then you can put a listen address to configure which of the network cards you want your data to be allowed to come from. I find this syntax a bit weird, you know. You have these kind of XML-like syntax here with these pointy brackets here, and but then inside you have these options which are more like an ini file. So that's a really weird syntax you have in Apache config files, but yeah, that's the way they are. Yeah, the important thing here is document root, and this points to var www HTML, and this is where Apache will take your files when you come from the web browser. Okay, with this option here, server name, you can configure the domain names that are valid for this site here. That's what I said earlier, that you can run multiple domains on the same Apache installation. And yeah, this is where you can say that yeah, this directory, this document root is for this domain name. So let's start another session here. So in here we have var www HTML, right? And in here, yeah, the installation of Apache has already put a file named index.html, which looks like this. This is just an HTML file, which is a document that has an HTML structure like this. Here, Apache 2 Debian default page. This is what a web page looks like internally. So when your web browser accesses the server, it sends a request to the server and says, hey, give me your data. Then by default, it will get this index.html back. And yeah, when it gets this data here, this is the data that it gets. The browser then parses this data and constructs the page from it. Here's some text that will be on the page, and with these div tags here, you can move around the different things on the page. You know, you can put them side by side or over each other, overlapping. There's a lot of things you can do, but I'm not a huge expert on HTML, and I don't want to turn this into an HTML course, so we won't look into that so much. I will just show you that if I now go to krb5 SSH server, then yeah, this is a page that I'm getting. This is the index.html page, right? This is the default welcome page. This is the default welcome page, right? So this is this here is the text representation of this page, and yeah, in your browser, when you press Ctrl+U, it will show you the source code of the page that you're looking at, and this is exactly what we've been seeing here directly on the file system. So yeah, so let's come back here and let's just move this index.html away. Okay. Now if I tried to access the page, I don't think it should work. Yeah, now it shows me a directory listing of the directory here. But yeah, let's make a different index HTML. So HTML files are similar to XML in that you always have these corresponding opening and closing tags, right? So in pointy brackets you have some text, and then at the end of the area you have that same text with a slash before it. And in here we can have a head and a body. You can also put JavaScript in here, but I'd say that's outside of the scope of this video. Oftentimes you would put an information here about the character set that you've used, but yeah, UTF-8 is very common today. I think that's the default for almost everything now. Anyways, here I will now put a title. This is my title. Okay. And in here I will just put with H1, which means large, hello world. Okay. Save it. And yeah, now let's go back to the web server. Yeah, now what we have is a large hello world, and this is my title is what is shown up here. Okay, so here in the tab bar, this is what is shown here, and this is also what will show up in your navigation history. Okay. This is some text. And again, I don't want this to turn into an HTML course, but yeah, just a few pointers with br/. You do a line break, and in here I will put a hyperlink, you know, these blue things that you can click and then it moves you somewhere else. You do that with an A tag. So with A and /A, this is for an anchor. And in here you can then put some text, right? And to specify where this anchor will lead you when you click it, you put a so-called attribute on this tag with href, hyperref, the hyperreference, equals, and then in quotes the target of your link. Save, refresh, and yeah, now we have, this is some text coming from here, line break and some anchor text, and if I click it, it brings you to my old web page. Yeah, so this is a little bit of HTML here. There's a lot more to know, but also JavaScript is something that you would need in web development, but again, this would just lead too far for this. So I will get out of this, and we could also create directories. And let's say I will move this index2html into that directory. Okay, now Now I can just append /foo, the directory name, /index2.html. And then I see this old index page, right? So the directories that you have in your file system here that are then reflected in these directories in your URLs. One thing I want to show you is here in these hyperrefs, one very useful thing that you can do is you can just start with a slash and then you reference the start of your own domain. Okay, so if I put something like /foo /index2.html here, okay, you see I only put slash and the relative directory here, right? And as you can see down in the corner, when I hover with the mouse over the link, then it shows you where it will bring you, namely to foo index2html, right? So now this link brings you there. But without the leading slash, this is a relative link. Okay, so this will then link to a directory relative to the current directory, right? If you have multiple levels of directories, then you can put a relative address here relative to the current directory that you are in. So this will now still get you to foo index2html, but yeah, this is more accidental at this point, just because we already were in the root, right? With this slash in the beginning, it brings you to the root of the domain here. Okay, now let's also look into etc Apache 2 apache2.conf. This is something that I often forget when I set up a new Apache installation, because I typically don't put my files in var www. And yeah, this is in this apache2.conf. You have to configure which directories are even allowed to be used. Okay. Okay, here it includes the plugins. The port configuration is in ports.conf, and yeah, here you have multiple directories and different policies how to deal with these different directories. So by default, everything is of course forbidden, right? So require all denied on slash, so meaning everything is forbidden unless configured otherwise. And here in var www, here require or granted, so the files in here are allowed. And if you want to put your files in some other location, then this is where you would have to configure that. Okay, let's also look into ports.conf. Yeah, it listens on port 80, the default port for HTTP. And yeah, if you are using SSL, then it also listens on 443, the default SSL port. And GNU TLS is another SSL implementation that would also then listen on the SSL port. Okay, so far we've only put static files in a certain location, right? And then had the browser download the file and interpret it and show it to you, right? But yeah, in reality, you don't want to write every page manually, right? You want your pages to be generated on the fly, so that when you have many pages, for example, you want them all to have a common style. You know, you want your page to have some consistent look and feel, for example. And yeah, one way you can make your page more dynamic, one way you can generate it on the fly as needed, is using a scripting language like PHP. Yeah, PHP stands for, well, originally it stood for personal homepage, but today it stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor, recursive acronym. So yeah, let's install PHP. And it already says that it will install libapache2-mod-php 7.4, where 7.4 is the current version of PHP. And at this time, when I'm recording it. And yeah, this libapache2 mod is a plugin for Apache that links Apache to PHP, so that you can then use PHP scripts in your web pages. So let's install this. Okay, so PHP is now installed. Let's look into this now a bit. Over here, we have our index.html, right? And yeah, by default, PHP will just take its input and output it. So if I run PHP on my index.html, it will just output that same HTML. So this is at this point what you would still get if you accessed the HTML file. By the way, we would rename the file to index.php. Yeah. Okay. So again, if we run PHP on it, it just pipes the whole content out, and this is what you would get in still get in your web browser right now. But this is something that I wanted to show you, that you can run PHP directly on your files manually. And yeah, if you have any problems with your PHP scripts, then running them manually, running PHP manually on these scripts is very useful. Okay, this will really give you so much better information than when you go to your web browser and try to access a file and it just says error. So in your web browser you won't see very useful information about the error, so running PHP on the file manually is just much better to diagnose your problems. Okay, again, by default, when you run PHP on your file, it just outputs the entire file, right? But that wouldn't be very useful, right? So how can we influence this now? Well, we can influence this now if we tell it to not output something directly using open pointy bracket $PHP. Okay. With this, we tell PHP now, hey, stop outputting everything. Okay. Then in here we can put some code, and with closing pointy bracket, we can then end this PHP part. Okay. And in here we can now program stuff like, for example, echo, let's say 1 + 1 maybe, save, see here it now printed 2, right? So in here I've calculated 1 plus 1, the result is 2, and here I get this 2. Let's put another line break here. So okay, so with this echo you can manually put something into the file at this point. And you have a lot of options where to get that data, you know, from a database or reading some files, whatever. There's a lot of things you can do here. But if you look into the source code here now again, you see here you just get the 2, right? This is not something that happens on the browser. This is something that happens on the server. The server calculates 1 plus 1. The result is 2, and it puts that into this document, right? The browser doesn't know that. The browser just gets this raw number 2. Okay, another thing that you can do is you can declare variables with a $sign. Let's call it ABC equals, let's say 5. And now let's echo $ABC plus $ABC. Now we get a 10, right? So we can declare variables, do some arithmetic. PHP is somewhat similar to C++, so you have for loops, for example. $I equals, let's say 1, $I less or equal 10, $I plus plus. Let's see if $I modulo 2 equals 0. So I will filter out the even numbers. Echo $I and yeah, let's also echo a little space to separate them. Okay, now we have 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, so the even numbers. And yeah, you have a lot of other options. Again, you can communicate to an SQL server, get tables from there, get data from there. You can open files with fopen, fclose, like in C. You have really lots of options. But one of the more important things that you can have are the so-called get parameters and also the post parameters, which is, well, here you can, in your address bar, you can put a question mark and then say foo equals, let's say, bar. Okay. And yeah, right now this is just ignored, but we could now access that with $_get, and then in brackets the name of the variable foo. Okay, so the variable name is foo and the value is bar. Okay, so you can set variables through this address bar here. So let's save this. Okay, you see now here it has printed this variable content, right? So here I've set foo to bar. Here I take that variable from the get parameters and print it, and that puts this bar here because bar is the content of that variable. Okay, but this will often crash your PHP script, because well, if you don't put this parameter now, okay, it doesn't do anything at this point, but okay, in older versions this would have crashed your script. So you can test if the get parameter is present by testing if is set $_get foo. Okay, you see now I can test is the variable set. In this case, it's not set. So because of that, I now print foo is not set. Okay, so far the stuff we are doing is very, very server-side, right? We just generate some stuff and print it, and it doesn't really react much to what we are doing here, except that we could send some variables through the address bar. Oftentimes you don't want to send stuff through this address bar, right? Because this might be visible to someone, like maybe a user, or let's say you're in a company and your administrator can see your web history, then your administrator will see also these parameters here. So you wouldn't want, for example, to put usernames and passwords in there, right? Because this could be seen by someone who's not supposed to see it. So to get data from your browser to the server in a less obvious way, well, with Wireshark, somebody could still read it if your connection is unencrypted, but anyways, to get data from your browser to the server through different means than this address bar, you can make something that's called a form. So in here, let's create another PHP file, and I will just call it form.php, and then here again /HTML head Okay, so in here we can now start a form and tell it method equals post. Okay. So the data that we then put into this form will be sent using post parameters, unlike the get parameters that we had. We can actually say method equals get, and then it will really take the data that you input and put it into the address bar, right? But that's a rather unusual thing that people usually don't do. So let's take the method post, and in here we can now define input with name, let's say A, and an input with name B. Okay, and then a button So save, and yeah, if we now go to form.php, we get 2 inputs, one for A, one for B, and a submit button. Okay. But yeah, what should happen when we press that submit button? It's supposed to send a post request. So it should take the data from these inputs here and send them to the server. But where to the server? That's defined with the action here. And let's take index.php. Okay. So reload. If we look into the source code, we have this form that's supposed to bring us to index.php with a post request and these 2 parameters. Okay. So let's let's test this. Okay, it has successfully brought us to the index.php, right? It also shows that here. But yeah, we haven't reacted to this input data in any way. So to work with that data that we then get, this is very similar to this get parameter here. Here we have post parameters. If is set $_post A, right? A was the name of the input field, right? Okay, so if we get the post parameter A, then we print the content. Save. And now let's get back to the form here. Hello world. Okay, I'm getting 2 zeros. Okay, let's try again. Hello world. Request headers, response headers, payload A and B, form data. Here in the network tab in the developer console, I've gone to index.php, headers, payload, right? So this is the content of the variables that has been sent. In PHP, string concatenation is done with dot. So let's try again. Submit. A equals hello, B equals world. Yes, now it works. Okay. Yeah, I think that's enough for today. I cannot make a whole PHP course, at least not in one video here. I think this is enough for this video. But yeah, look into some best practices for PHP, because this is quite hackish what I just did here. Yeah, also look into some best practices for HTML, and because again, this was a really very simple example. In reality, you would do much more complex stuff to have things that just have a better layout, that look better. Also, I've done nothing with CSS styles, cascading style sheets, or JavaScript, also a big point in web development. But yeah, at some point I need to finish this, so I think this is good here. Okay, so if you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe, and see you next time.